Welcome everybody to a Monday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. This is an Inmates Run the Asylum episode where it's just myself and CJ Woodling with me. No Felix. It's all kids here to have fun, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we're here. It's going to be a good time, but we have actually some serious kind of news to talk about at the top of this. This past week, the NHL players decided to step up, and on Thursday, out of protest due to the police shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they decided to take a step back and not play the games on Thursday and Friday. And so kind of what were your thoughts on all of this, CJ? Because I want to kind of jump into this because this is the big topic. This is a big news. I mentioned it on our Patreon episode where Felix and I discussed this a little bit, but this may be the big thing that everyone remembers this playoff for.
Definitely one of the big things. And I know the NHL got a lot of crap for how they handled the initial aftermath, because keep in mind, if you guys remember, the Milwaukee Bucks for the NBA were the first team to basically strike their game. It wasn't a protest, it was a boycott. This was withholding of labor. So this was a strike, specifically a wildcat strike. And basically what that means is that this was a strike by the players without the players' union knowing. They took it upon themselves to not play their game in protest of this. And, you know, Jacob Blake was definitely the big thing. I think that the tipping point, though, was probably the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, the 17-year-old who came over and shot several protesters, and how that was handled. And so it's really it's a situation where I think they got a lot of crap, and I think rightfully so to some extent. Obviously, you couldn't do anything about the earlier game. The later games they played, and then they held up this like really weird sign about ending racism, and it just, in the context of everything, it seemed a little tone deaf. Now, that being said, the next morning, the players basically drove a movement to cancel their games and to not play in solidarity. And a lot of the reporting that's coming out was that players were calling specifically like Ryan Reeves and a few others, and they were getting in contact with members of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, which was Akim Aliu. Evander Kane's been a big proponent of that. And there were just tons of players, and I believe Reeves said at one point that there were like over 200 players who went to these meetings that they had in the middle of the day to talk about what they should do and how they should move forward. And that to me shows some really great character and some really good I'd say some good determination from the players to want to do what they believe is right, because the NHL has been talking for so long, ever since the George Floyd protests, about standing up against racism, standing up against injustice, police brutality, things like that. And they have been wanting to learn and grow. And I feel like that even if it was a little bit late, at the end of the day, they did do a good job later on with a player-led movement to stop the games for a couple of days.
And jumping in a little bit here, Felix mentioned this on our Patreon episode, and I think it's a pretty good point that it is hard for the NHL to be first when it is a predominantly white league. And I think that it is telling, though, that when you saw that video on, what would that have been? Was that Thursday night? With all of the Western Conference teams with Ryan Reeves and there to support him. And Ryan Reeves said, he's like, Kevin Shattenkirk texted me in the morning. All of these guys were reaching out to him. And it almost felt like this was the moment where everyone, at least in the hockey, in that bubble, got it and got that this was bigger than them, that they needed to take a step back and that they needed to essentially allow everyone to kind of think about this and have conversations about this. Because at the end of the day, that was the purpose of the protest. The purpose of the protest is their entertainment and hockey exists as an escape. Like, and that's what it's there for. It's meant to be an escape from everything. But these are real life issues, and an escape shouldn't happen from them. And the conversations within communities, within different things, those need to happen. And so that is what the players are stepping up and doing, is they are trying to take a step back. My only my criticism isn't of the players, because I think the players did a fantastic job. I think that them all standing up there together, them being there with Ryan Reeves, it was really meaningful. It was really powerful. And that to me When I said that this is going to be one of the things that we look back on this playoffs as being one of the big moments, it's going to be all of those players standing there together. Because to me, that is one of the images of this playoffs that will go down in this weird playoff. My main criticism of all of this, though, actually has to do with kind of the NHL and their broadcast partners on this, in the sense of they had multiple hours of TV time. And I've mentioned this a couple different places, but I want to mention it here because I think that it was a really big lost opportunity from them, where they had, it was 4 games that were canceled, something like that, between Thursday and Friday. So that's what, like 8 hours of TV time, something along those lines, 8 to 10 hours of TV. Use that to focus on people of color within the hockey. Use that to focus on the You Can Play movement. I mentioned this, but it doesn't necessarily satisfy what we're talking about right now, but it is a big portion of the You Can Play movement, of diversity, of things like that. Show an NWHL game on TV. That is something where you can highlight and you can make a lot of good out of this situation, because this is a crappy situation, let's be honest. And right now, that is a way that you could find some way to make good on it. And that's what the players are trying to do. And so I think that the one big criticism is that they weren't jumping on it with something like that. And that's not something that's hard to do. I guarantee that NWHL would give them a championship game or something like that. One of their best games for them to watch. Show the U.S. women's game again. The U.S. women's against Canada. Easy. NBC owns the rights to it. Like, these are easy calls.
Well, no, they don't. The Olympics owns the right. NBC doesn't own rights for that. But I get what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So the thing that I just want to really hammer home here.
Go for it.
Is that to the people who say keep politics out of sports, those people do not know the history of sports, and they view sports and they view the athletes that play them as basically monkeys for their own entertainment, puppets for their own entertainment. And the reality is that these players are human beings, and just because most of them are millionaires and just because they live sort of this privileged life, that doesn't mean that they're not capable of feeling human emotion. That doesn't mean they're not capable of caring about certain situations and letting their voice. For players of color, we've seen stories over and over again, especially in hockey, about how prevalent racism is in hockey, even against some of the biggest black stars. And this is not something that you can do. Yes, we usually use it as an escape. And one of the reasons why I was so glad that hockey and just sports in general came back was that there's so much going on in the world. I wanted a little bit of normalcy restored.
Yep. And having an escape isn't a bad thing either.
No, and it's absolutely,
and it's good for your mental health.
Exactly. But when rubber meets the road, when these issues come up and you have a platform as large as professional sports does, capable of affecting so much change, capable of getting a message out there, this is something that you just kind of have to expect, and you have to understand that this is going to happen. You think back to all sorts of politics and sports being intertwined. You think back to Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, just so many of these big social issues. And by the way, I do want to say that what we're talking about right now is not a political issue. If you think it's a political issue, you are wrong, and I have no problem saying that to your face. This rises above politics. This is a human rights issue. Human rights are not politics. They can be intertwined, but they are two separate things. And so what you're doing here is you are standing up for human rights, and these players are lending their support to that. And if you don't necessarily agree with what's going on, that's not a terrible thing, but you have to at least understand what they are protesting and why they're doing this. And if you don't, then that's on you.
Yep. Let me end it with this, then we'll move on. There is no difference between the players voicing their political opinions or on this, as you mentioned, a human rights issue, than you being Joe Schmo being on Twitter talking about it. There's no difference there. And so that is kind of where this ends. So transitioning, actually, Tampa Bay just won. Tampa Bay has officially outed the Boston Bruins. That is a massive deal.
Wow.
That is a massive
That's huge.
deal. If I remember correctly, I was the only person, am I remembering right? The only person to pick the Tampa Bay Lightning out of you, me, and Felix?
I know I picked Boston in 7, so
let me double check
I
here.
feel
Let me
terrible.
double check. Felix also
Wow,
selected.
no, don't worry about it. We'll just assume you're wrong and move on. We don't need to do this.
Felix also decided to pick Boston in 7. And who was it that put together a meme of CJ and Felix locking hands, saying, agreeing on that Jake is wrong?
Him. That guy.
That pillow? The pillow did?
That guy.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough. Well, still, Jake right, CJ Felix
It wasn't me.
wrong. CJ Felix wrong. No, but I mentioned this, and we have more stuff that we're going to get into here, but this is obviously big news, seeing as it's just happened. Tampa, I put in my article this past week that they are kind of showing the signs of what they were last year and what they were supposed to be in the playoffs, except the playoffs are a small sample. And they are playing like that. And if you are an Eastern Conference team, or a team in the NHL, be terrified, because they've done this without Steven Stamkos. They did it tonight.
What you're saying is that regular season doesn't matter?
Why?
Yeah,
why?
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think you're saying playoffs matter way more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the small sample size matters.
Exactly.
But, no, it's, for me,
statisticians hate him.
It's great to see a team that is very good do well in the playoffs. It is very, very nice to see that. So I'm happy to see Tampa move on. Good on them. Sad that Andre Kasha and Nick Ritchie won't have a chance to go win a cup. But keep in mind, Tampa's doing this without Stamkos. They did it tonight without Kucherov. It's insane.
Yeah. They're looking really good. They're playing, and I wouldn't even say that Tampa for the most part is overwhelming people. They're playing just good hockey. They're rarely making mistakes.
Yeah.
And they're just a team that's put together so well, back to front, and they're the type of team that you watch, that if you want to see a hockey team play just a high level quality hockey, you watch the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah. Yep. Victor Hedman, by the way, with the winner. So now that that's done, the topic we were going to get into before we get into our typical type of content for the past week in the NHL, what kind of spurred this was Shea Theodore had a fantastic game. And Lewis, I see that you're in the chat. You're going to hate us for talking about this, because I saw you on Twitter yesterday just muting the word Shea Theodore. So apologies for this. But what spurred this was Shea Theodore had a massive game yesterday, and it brought on the conversation between you, me, and Felix in our group chat of, is that the worst trade in Ducks history? And it got me thinking. You brought up a trade that I will just hammer you on as being a good trade now. But it got me wondering, what are the best trades and what are the worst trades in Ducks history? And so I kind of made a list of a couple, and I want to go through them with you. Some of them are going to be before your time, CJ, but I think that they're worth bringing up, and they're interesting trades. So, but before we get into that, let me do this real quick. I was going through, let me get to it really quick. NHL Trade Tracker. NHL Trade Tracker has on their website, best trades and worst trades. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. It's biggest trades and worst trades. There's one trade under biggest trades for the Ducks. Take a guess. It's from post 2011.
Is it Kessler?
It is Kessler. How is Chris Pronger not on here? How is Teemu Selanne not on here?
Yeah, you telling me 2011 was the giveaway.
Yeah, I know.
The Kessler trade is easily the biggest trade, since 2010, 2011 or whatever. But yeah, in terms of impact, I Selanne and Pronger were bigger, easily.
Yeah. Okay, and now worst trades. Here are the worst trades in Anaheim Ducks history. I'm not even going to let you guess, because it's just absolutely laughable that these are on here.
Okay.
June 10th, 2000, or the years 2000. the Anaheim Ducks trade to the Calgary Flames a second-round pick, which became Matt Pettinger, and they acquired John Sebastian Giguère.
What?
Yeah.
What? These were the worst trades?
Yeah.
How did they... How did they even come up with that?
I am calling out NHL Trade Tracker because this is just laughable.
Do they have a bot that just came up with random trades?
And here's the only other one on this worst trades list. From February 7th, 1996, the Winnipeg Jets acquire Chad Kilger, Ole Teradowski, and a 1996 third-round pick that becomes Per Anton Lundstrom for a fourth-round pick, Mark Chouinard, and Teemu Selanne. The Ducks acquiring... Yeah, it's hilarious. How?
There's no way somebody picked these. There was some sort of a mistake. There's something that's wrong here because these are two of the best trades in Ducks history.
Yeah, there's something very, very wrong there, and it was hilarious. When I saw that, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can just look at this, and it might highlight some things for me to give me a refresher. Nope. It gave me that. But the funny thing is that Teemu Selanne to the Anaheim Ducks is potentially one of the best trades in Anaheim Ducks history. The Ducks get Teemu Selanne, who, on the last podcast, I believe Sean, who's in our Twitch chat, got kind of mad at how many goals we said Teemu Selanne would have had in an era-adjusted season in his rookie year. By the way, Sean looked into it a little bit more. We were maybe a little bit low at assuming 45 goals. He's probably more in the 60 range. But getting Teemu Selanne, who would become just a stalwart for the Ducks, they got him for Chad Kilger, Ole Teradowski, who's no slouch, let's be real, decent, pretty good defenseman, but they got him for Chad Kilger, who's a third-round pick, and they got a fourth-round pick back. So basically, they lost one round in the draft, traded it, and got Teemu Selanne for Teradowski. I mean, let's just say Chouinard and Kilger cleared each other out. Mm-hmm. That's absolute highway robbery, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that Teemu Selanne trade may be like not only is that probably the best trade in Ducks history, that's probably one of the greatest trades of all time of like in the NHL.
Yeah, it's a very, very good trade in hindsight at the time, everything like that. So Hardcore Luchador saying maybe they have it reversed and those aren't the worst trades. I can show you my screen. The screen said worst trades in Anaheim Ducks history.
Yeah, I'm on that page too, and he's right. I can confirm that.
I mean, it does feel like it's flipped though, a little bit there. But
it does.
All right, here's another one that let's do the bad one of this and a good one because they're definitely tied together. And so at the end of this, let's pick best and worst out of these lists. But for the worst category, you have Ryan Whitney and Eric Tangradi, I believe is who was traded with Chris Kunitz and Eric Tangradi for Ryan Whitney, I believe is the trade. Let me confirm that really quickly though.
It is.
So that is just an awful trade. Ryan Whitney was a pylon. There's no way else to call it. And they gave up Chris Kunitz, who, granted, I think got a little overrated. I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that. A little bit overrated because he played with Crosby.
Yeah, I mean, Kunitz is pretty much the textbook answer of, what happens when you put a decent but not fantastic forward with an elite center. Like, he's basically the case study of that.
Yeah, I mean, he had 388 points in 569 games in Pittsburgh. Like, that's pretty damn good.
It is.
But you're playing with Crosby. But so exactly. Who knows if he would have produced like that in Anaheim? I mean, he was let me see, when he was with the Ducks, I mean, he was putting up 60 points, 50 points with the Ducks. And granted, they did trade him at 29 years of age. And they got back Ryan Whitney. And Ryan
Whitney at the time was decent. Like, I think at the time that wasn't a horrible trade.
I think the issue with Ryan Whitney is it's almost as if I think advanced stats were just coming into their own. They hadn't really hit mainstream at that point in time. I feel like if we would have had advanced stats back then, someone would have been able to tell you Ryan Whitney's not good.
Yeah, I
Because
think you may be right.
he was 25 years old at the time of the trade. He's coming off. I mean, he had a 59-point season as a 23-year-old in 06-07. So he had some really strong production years, but he feels like a guy that got a little bit overrated because of his size. He was 6'4", 210.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like that. So that's the bad, because that undoubtedly bad trade. Good.
And just so you see here too, I'm just kind of looking at his metrics from 07-08 onward, because that's when Corsi became an officially tracked stat. He only played, did he only play 20 games in Anaheim?
Probably that sounds about right. Let me double check that for you. Yeah, 20 games.
So here's the thing.
20 games in 08. Well, because that was a deadline. Go to the next year. Go to 09-10. He played 62 games in 2009, 2010.
Got it. Okay. So if I put that one, so here's the thing. In 20 games with Anaheim, he had actually fantastic underlying numbers where he did.
Well, there goes my theory.
Yeah, he had like a 58% expected goals for in those 20 games. However, hold on, from 08-10, if you can put all of his Anaheim stint together, he ended up coming out with a 47.01 Corsi for percentage and a 48.52 expected goals. So no, he was not that great overall. He had a good 20 games once he was traded and then fell off the next year.
Yeah. So the Ducks were able to trade him, though, and got Lumiere Vishnovsky back. And for those of you that don't remember,
which was great.
Lumiere Vishnovsky was insanely good. Actually, can you look up his advanced numbers? I'm actually curious what they were, because, I mean, the thing is, this was pre me knowing about all the stats and so everything like that. But in his 81 games as a Duck in 2010, 2011, so this trade happened. The Ducks acquired Ryan Whitney at the 2009 deadline. At the 2010 deadline, they moved him to Edmonton to get Lumiere Vishnovsky in return. I believe that was the entirety of the trade. I will look that up real quick. But basically, yeah, it was Ryan Whitney and a 6th-round pick, which became Brandon Davidson for Lumiere Vishnovsky. Vishnovsky put up, let's see, where is this? 68 points in 81 games. That's really good for a defenseman. That
is good, but his underlying metrics were very pedestrian for the Ducks.
I will take underlying numbers that are pedestrian if you're putting up 68 points.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that too. I mean, obviously it's not going to bode well for future production, but obviously looking into the past, 100% it's fantastic. He had an expected goals for percentage with Anaheim of 49.13, so not bad, but basically just kind of mediocre. But that being said, I feel like Vishnovsky was even more valuable too because of his impact on Cam Fowler, a rookie Cam Fowler at the time. I think that was huge for Fowler to play with him, and that really helped with some of his development, especially if I think we all kind of agree that Fowler hit the NHL too early, but if he was going to be too early, having Vishnovsky there to help him out, I think is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and so here's the reason why those underlying metrics probably were pedestrian. He got a lot of his points on the power play, which is something the Ducks have been lacking for a long time. But he had 26 assists on the power play. 26 of his 26 of his 50 assists were on the power play. So that's really good.
He was a power play machine.
Yeah. So, okay. So got that one. Let me just real quick. Chris Pronger to the Ducks. That trade is one that really was the point of the Ducks becoming a contender. So I don't want to spend too much time as we have on these other ones on those, but that trade to me is one of the biggest ones in Ducks history, to be honest. And so it has to be good. It was Chris Pronger from Edmonton. The Ducks gave to Edmonton Lupul, Schmid, a first-round pick, second-round pick, and then it became another first-round pick. And so it was a hefty toll to give up. But Brian Burke has said it. Sometimes you have to make those big trades. You have to give up a lot to get something. And that's probably one of my big criticisms.
Yeah, and that's the thing that so many people still don't understand year after year is that in order to get something good, you have to give up something good. None of these Nick Ritchie for Jonathan Drouin or, or whatever these big trades were at the time. You have to give up, and that was a perfect example of that. And keep in mind, the Ducks were already contenders, I think, at that point without Pronger.
Oh, I mean, they had
Pronger
just made the
made them a
conference final.
legit Stanley. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Pronger made them a legit conference final, or like, made them a legit Stanley Cup threat. Like Pronger made that team the favorites for the Cup. And that's the thing too, is that remember, Pronger was on Edmonton. He was a huge part of the reason why the Ducks were knocked out that year against Edmonton in the Western Conference Final. So what does Brian Burke do? He shells out everything he can. He lands Pronger. They win a cup by trotting out Scott Niedermayer and Chris Pronger for 30 minutes a night.
Yep.
Like that's what we mean when we say, look, sometimes you got to swing for the fences. Perfect example.
Yep. And then here's one. This is the one that you brought up as being a bad trade. And now I'm going to call you out for it.
Okay, fine. I've accepted
defend yourself. This trade, by the way, is Chris Pronger being traded away from the Ducks in June of 2009. Defend yourself, CJ.
I didn't realize this was a little bit before my time for fandom. So
fair enough. I'm just giving you crap.
Why I have this. That being said, my one defense of that take for this trade, of this being a bad trade, is that I really yes, Pronger was in the last year of his deal. He was 35 years old. Like there were signs on the wall to trade him, but I truly believe that if Pronger were still with the Ducks that year, they could have had another cup. Like Pronger's that good of a defenseman. He's that much of a game changer. I think that the Ducks would have a really good shot at getting another cup.
So here's my argument against that is that they didn't make the playoffs the next year.
They were 8 points out of the playoffs, which was something honestly like with that. Pronger on your team. I don't know. I think they can make that up.
Yeah, they're a fringe playoff team, but also keep in mind, here's the great equalizer on this. Also, they don't trade Pronger, and they're within 8 points, or they make it in the playoffs. Ducks don't have Cam Fowler.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
Yeah, there you go. I come with logic and reason.
You do, but honestly, I'd rather have another cup than Cam Fowler. I like Cam, but
true. I see that's the thing is I don't think they would have made or won the cup as an 8 seed with Chris Pronger. I mean, their chance was 0-9. And the reason why that trade is good, they were what's up?
Nothing. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. But the Ducks were in cap trouble there. They were left in a really tough situation by Brian Burke, and Brian Murray took over. And that was a deal that was made because Chris Pronger, I think, had a couple years left, making about over $6 million, which at the time was a lot. And he was 35 years old. And so they were able to move him, get Joffrey Lupul, Lucas Spiza. Lucas Spiza at the time, even though he's turned into what he is, he was actually a decently touted prospect. He was 19 years old. At 18, he had played in the NHL. They had, and they got 2 first-round picks, a conditional third round pick. The condition didn't happen because the Flyers would have had to win the cup, but they still got Lupul, a roster player, who's a pretty good roster player, Sabiza, who's a good prospect, and 2 firsts. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all.
Not at all.
So I actually say that's a good trade. I got 2 more for you. One of them is good, but not great. So I'm just throwing it in here out of just cause. Andrew Cogliano for a 2nd round pick. That was a good trade. That was a good trade.
Yeah.
Good trade. One of the ones where you can kind of highlight what Murray's done well, which is find some younger talent and move picks for them to get the team back into contention when they were kind of in Getzlaf and Perry's prime. And here's the other one. This might be my favorite Ducks trade. It would have been, I think, 2010, summer of 2010. Let me double check that. No, sorry. It would have been summer of 2011, where the Ducks would have traded with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They traded the 22nd overall pick to the Maple Leafs and got the 30th overall pick back and the 39th overall pick back in the this is 2011. I've jumped around. Sorry. It is 2011 draft.
No, which trade this is?
The Toronto Maple Leafs picked Tyler Biggs with the 22nd overall pick. The Ducks picked Rickard Rakell at 30 and John Gibson at 39.
Who are those losers?
If you're looking for a trade where you're giving away nothing and getting a great value in return, that is what happens there. Now, granted, it's a little bit different because it is Magic Beans at that point in time, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But that's still, if you're looking at the history of trades, that's going to be one that goes down in the good way. Also, Dallas just scored 5-2. I want this game. Michael Hutchison is in net. This game could end 10-8. I want it to happen. Please.
Gimme all the goals. No defense, no goaltending, just pure adrenaline.
Okay, so I got we've ran through all the good and one bad.
By the way, it's 6-2.
Oh, well, stop! You're ahead of me. That goal must have just happened.
Get an actual TV subscription, not this delayed streaming.
No.
Good Lord, Kudobin, what kind of move was that?
You're getting our live reactions to the game. Enjoy this, people.
Oh my God, that was horrible. Kudoman should have stopped that easily.
I'm getting a
call
call
till you
from
see it.
Anza. This is what happens when you let the inmates run the asylum. I'm getting a phone call from Anza, California. I don't even know where that is. Who knows?
Somewhere in Central California.
I don't know. But hi, I'm not answering it. So here we go. So, bad trade time. We started with the good news. We started with the good things.
Now let's do what everybody's favorite thing is, which is commiserate and shit on stuff. Let's do it.
Way more fun. So the first bad trade that I want to bring up was March 2001. The Ducks traded Teemu Selanne away, and they got Jeff Friesen, Steve Shields, and a second-round pick. How do you trade away Teemu Selanne and not? I mean, granted, I was 10. Yeah, I was 10 then. You were definitely younger than that. I don't know what the value of a first-round pick was back then. I don't know what trades were like. How do you not get a first-round pick for Teemu Selanne?
Yeah, I have no idea. Who was the Ducks general manager at that time?
I believe that may have been Brian Murray.
Oof, because Brian Murray overall was good, but man, if that was him, that was a mess up.
Yeah, that was not a good trade. I mean, there may be people out there that know the history of it a little bit more than I do. Seeing as you weren't paying attention really back then at all. I was young, and even though I watched games, didn't really pay attention in that same way. Mm-hmm. No, that would have been Pierre Gauthier. Brian Murray was the GM starting in 2002.
Got it.
So yes. The next trade that I have would have happened in 2008. This is when I can remember 2000. So, to be completely honest, 2006 is when I think that I really got back into hockey. And then 06-07 made me kind of die hard. And so I remember all the trades really from 06-07, 07-08, everything like that. That's when I can remember every single trade when they happened. I remember actually just talking about trades. Why not? This is fun. 2009, I can remember being pissed that they traded away Sammy Paulson and not believing it just because I didn't understand how the cap worked and didn't understand the hard cap in the same way that I do now. And the Ducks were bad and they needed to move away guys because they were in cap hell. And so it's funny. I can remember that trade happening and being like, no. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? And so just hindsight's a funny thing from time to time, but this trade was done for similar reasons. They had to make a move, if I'm remembering correctly, because they were looking to re-sign Corey Perry. He was coming off his ELC. He needed a new contract. And so one of the casualties of that, one of the cap casualties of that was Andy Mcdonald. This happened. I'm trying to find the trade very quickly right now. But this happened in December of 2007. The Ducks traded Andy Mcdonald to the St. Louis Blues and got Doug Weight and a 7th-round pick and Michael Burner. Andy Mcdonald was a very, very good player. A very, very good player for the Ducks team. I don't know if you would have remembered at all, but he was the center on the Teemu Selanne line during the Cup run. During his time with the Ducks, so 06-07, he had 78 points in 82 games. He had 78 points in
70-point players? What's that like?
And in 05-06, 85 points. So
Beautiful.
he was not a slouch. He was a smaller player, and I mean, part of it I think is he didn't exactly fit Brian Burke's model of hockey because of him being so small. But I'm trying to look up, just out of curiosity, what his cap situation was. But even if he was in the final year of his contract, no, he wasn't. He was in the second year of his contract. So he was making $3.33 million against the cap 06, 07, 07, 08, 08, 09. So he had 2 years left on his deal, just coming off those seasons. How is all that you get back a veteran on a UFA or UFA contract in Doug Waite and a 7th round pick, and then, I don't know, Michael Berner, I guess, didn't really become anything. I don't really know.
Maybe just the fact that you're getting Doug Waite may have been the appeal there, even if it was past his prime. Doug Waite on it coming up for a UFA.
I mean, this was a Ducks team, I guess, that was one of the best teams in the West at the time. But I mean, let me look real quick how old he was. Doug Waite was 37.
Yeah.
How is that a trade that you make where you're trading a prime age Andy McDonald? He was just out of his prime. He was age 30. How do you do that and not get actually something in return?
Truculence.
Like that.
That's why.
That to me is one where I was not going into this thinking about that trade, and then I was kind of going through the history and saw that. I was like, oh man, that trade was bad. Like really, really bad. Okay.
Yeah, that was like literally just before my time.
Yeah.
Because I started, paying attention to the Ducks in 2010, 2011.
All right. So we're going to jump ahead. That was a Brian Burke trade. We've gone through, we went through a Pierre Gauthier trade. We went through a Brian Burke trade. Now we're getting into Bob Murray, who, granted, Bob Murray has been the general manager for 10 plus years now for the Ducks.
For almost, yeah. I mean, just to put that into perspective, Bob Murray has been general manager of the Anaheim Ducks for almost half of the franchise history.
Yeah. So you're going to make some good trades and bad trades, but
yeah,
there've been some bad ones. Kyle Palmieri for a 2nd and 3rd round pick. Bad.
See, so that was bad, but I think what made it worse was him
trying
to justify the trade after. The logic behind the trade made it so much worse in saying that he was going to score too much. And look, when you really read between the lines, you kind of get what he's saying, where he's basically saying, yeah, he's going to score and price himself out of the Ducks, and we get that. But he still had another entire year left on his deal. And if you really did think that he was going to score too much and do that, and you're in the middle of win now mode going into playoff runs, why? I don't get it. You dug yourself into a way bigger hole.
And he's an RFA. It's not as if he's a UFA. Even when that contract expires, you own his rights. Take advantage. Yep. It just made no sense. No sense at all. Thing.
He didn't have the raw numbers that would have justified him getting this big deal or anything like that. His underlying numbers were great. Like, anybody who was paying attention to analytics knew that Palmieri was a good player. But even his traditional numbers, he was going to get a lot less than what he ended up getting in New Jersey.
I mean, here's what I've said the last bit on various different trades that have happened. Never sell a guy when his value's low. If you think his value is going to get higher, hold on to him. Don't move him. This isn't that difficult. This isn't rocket science. It's pure value assessment. It's not that hard.
Bob Murray's strategy on beating the stock market is to sell low and buy high.
Yeah, seriously. That legitimately. So, okay. All right, then here's another trade. This happened at the 2015 deadline. This is one where I've actually argued at the time, not a bad trade. But to be honest, I have to take my own advice here and look at things in hindsight. And whether it's good or bad, evaluate them in that sense. James Wisniewski in a 3rd round pick for Rene Bourque, William Karlsson in a 2nd round pick was a bad trade. No matter what, even if, like me, you think that Wisniewski was underutilized by Bruce Boudreau during that playoff run, that was a trade that brought a guy in that could kind of take over in some areas where the Ducks had some flaws. But to give up that amount of value and then trade the guy a couple months later for Anton Hudobin, who did not last that long on the Ducks, it's a bad trade. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Like, especially if William Karlsson didn't become what he has become, you could make the argument, all right, if he's a third line center, fine. But he's found his game, and granted, there's a lot of teams. Columbus looks dumb also because of how they handled Karlsson. But just because multiple teams look bad doesn't make it all right. Like,
Yeah, you know what though? So here's my thing.
All right,
that wasn't a good trade because of obviously what happened after. I still really hesitate to use William Karlsson as a reason why that was so bad. Partially because of Columbus and kind of how they weren't able to get anything with him, and Vegas
I agree.
was, but also because look, I don't think any of us at the time thought that Boudreaux was going to underutilize Wisniewski. Like the giving up that to get to Wisniewski, and the proven, like, he had a really good season with Columbus. He was injured at the time and had to get healthy again to come back. But like the Ducks again were in win now mode. They were in like Wisniewski is definitely the type of trade that in a vacuum at the time, I thought was actually a pretty good deal, and that was going after. It's obviously what happened after that made it worse.
It was Bob Murray taking a shot, and I think that should be commended, and that's kind of my view on it. But I think that if we're talking about bad trades in hindsight, this is one. I think that you kind of have to classify it as that. And granted, there's plenty of bad trades and good trades that we haven't mentioned. This is just me kind of going through, making a quick list of some of these trades just for fun, seeing as there's no real Ducks games on right now, if you haven't noticed. So sometimes it's fun to look back on things and talk about them.
This is a person who just woke up from a coma in early March.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't wait to watch the Ducks right now.
Yeah. They're expecting training camp. They're expecting the prospect camp to happen right now.
Yeah.
Can I go watch Trevor Zegras?
I just woke up from a coma. I'm really hoping for training camp, and I can't wait to watch it in a group full of people.
Who'd the Ducks take in the draft? Did they get the first overall pick?
I hope so.
All right, this is just for fun. I'm listing this trade here just because I have to, for the brand, for my own, to give you crap, to make me feel better and get you mad. Andre Kasha trade.
Why are you doing this to me?
For those of you that don't know, CJ and I have a very big disagreement about this trade. That CJ thinks it's bad, but it's not horrible. Whereas I view it as awful, really bad. This is one of Bob Murray's worst trades.
I don't view it as one of Bob Murray's worst trades, but yeah, it's the degree of badness that we disagree on.
Yeah, so it's a bad trade, though. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good trade, for sure.
But yeah, so it was not a good trade. I mean, you traded a guy that was at his all-time low in value. I mean, let's just go through it really quickly. They traded Andre Kasha, got back David Backes, first-round pick that is now going to be... Actually, breaking news, 27th overall pick.
Boom, the best possible outcome.
Yeah,
at this point.
Actually, nope, taking him back. Good trade. Ducks got 27th overall pick. No, it's still a low pick. Actually,
yeah.
We can get on that a little bit, but I have some thoughts.
And to be completely honest with you, people, like the difference in pick value between like 27, 28, 29, 30 is like negligible. Like, honestly, it didn't really matter where Boston ended up. It wasn't going to be that big of a deal. Sure, you have a higher chance of doing it, but realistically, but still, we'll take it. 27th overall.
Yeah, so 27th and Axel Anderson, who, what was it? On our Patreon episode, we ran through Corey Pronman's organizational assessment, and he has him as a maybe an NHLer. So the Ducks got David Backes and his cap hit. They got 27th overall and a prospect that is maybe an NHLer for Andre Kasha. That's not a good trade. But I actually want to talk on that pick real quick. We've talked about that pick a bunch, and I think it being 27 is interesting. But the worst trade of them all, I really don't think there's any argument, and we can circle back to what the best trade is. But the worst trade, sorry, Lewis, Shea Theodore. I don't think there's any argument here. The Ducks were in a position to fail. No doubt there. Going in the expansion draft because of how their roster was set up. And I think that is a point that needs to be made, because I think we're going to hammer Bob Murray with this trade. So I think saying that the Ducks were in a bad position because of their roster setup, the age of the roster, the fact that it really kind of they were set up to compete, and they had prime age players and everything like that. And so I think that needs to be stated. The issue that Bob Murray had, because also I think when he gave Kevin Bieksa that no move clause, they didn't know how no move clauses were going to be handled during the expansion draft. So I think that I think that these are important things to lay out, to lay out all the facts and everything like that. But there was a way around it. You could have, Kevin Bieksa reportedly on his podcast stated that he actually went to Bob Murray. I don't know, did I ever tell you this? That he said
I don't think you did.
Where he said Bob Murray approached him about waiving his no move clause. Kevin Bieksa said, I'd be willing to do that if you could give me an extension. Which is, I think, a completely fair thing for Kevin Bieksa to say. And
interesting.
Basically what happened was Kevin Bieksa, a week or two before the expansion draft, went to Bob Murray and said, oh, what's happening with that? You never got back to me. He's like, oh, don't worry. We've got it taken care of. And
interesting.
And so Kevin Bieksa would have been willing to waive his no movement clause. Now, granted, here's the thing. If, in order for that to be effective, if they were trying to protect Manson and Vatanen, they would have had to have moved one of Manson or Vatanen prior to the expansion draft. And Vatanen was supposedly hurt, so it could hurt something. It could have affected his trade value. Maybe they didn't want to make the trade, different things like that. But in hindsight, would you have made that deal with Kevin Bieksa and dealt with him having, as a Ducks fan, been okay if it came out that he got an extension, but it was because he waived his no move clause?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, Shea Theodore is that good, and to be completely honest, even if you do extend Bieksa, you still have ways of either eating that, buying him out, and dealing, like, you're going to deal with the financial repercussions of that for so long, but there's still ways that you can get him off your roster. It's not like you're necessarily forced to play him, or you at least give him an opportunity to look, because Bieksa had moments in his Ducks career where he was, fine and serviceable. So, but Shea Theodore is, he's just that good. He had that much potential. I would gladly take
it felt
another
very
2-3 years of Bieksa.
It felt very short-sighted based upon his playoffs that he had. Shea Theodore, if you don't remember, had a pretty poor playoffs the previous season, going, I believe, 2017. So when the Ducks made the conference final against the Nashville Predators, and Brandon Montour had kind of a breakout performance, and it almost felt like they put too much weight in that, and really and thought that Montour was going to be the next best thing, and Theodore wasn't going to be that great. And now, granted, also we should mention, adding a lot of qualifiers here because we're talking about a prospect, but who knows if he would have developed this way when he would have stayed with the Ducks. But all things considered, the Ducks trading away a player that was not eligible to be taken in the expansion draft due to Bob Murray's mismanagement of various different things is the worst trade in Ducks history. Because if you were to look back and just say, all right, the Ducks lose one of Manson or Vatanen, that's better.
Like, if that would have been a tough pill to swallow. But here's the thing. I still believe that the original signing of the Kevin Bieksa trade is the root of all of this. The fact that the Ducks traded for him, and them trading for Bieksa wasn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. It wasn't good, but it wasn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. What made it awful was the fact that they signed him to an extension with a full no move clause before he even ever played a game for the Ducks, and when it had been extremely clear that he had been really starting to decline over the previous 2 seasons. Like, I just don't know what goes through your head. Or, you know what? Now that I think about it, yeah,
Well, so here...
Murray... So Kevin Bieksa is... So Josh Manson is a defenseman that Bob Murray thought Kevin Bieksa was.
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. Here's the thing with Kevin Bieksa. And not defending him at all, not defending this trade at all. I'm just laying out the facts here. I'm pretty positive it was well reported that when the Ducks traded for him, the only way he was going to accept... The only way, because I think he had a no-move clause previously. The only way he was going to accept a trade is if there was an extension as part of it with the full no-move clause.
Correct.
So if the Ducks were that hell-bent on getting Kevin Bieksa, then a no-move clause had to be there. And so I think that's... I
I
think
think
the
that also
argument.
just goes to show that also just goes to show that again, Bieksa had been really declining. He hadn't been good in
Yeah.
Vancouver for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a good defenseman at one point. Like he was a very good stay-at-home defenseman, especially during their 2011 Cup run. But like he was clearly not good anymore at that point.
Yeah.
And I think that just illustrates Bob Murray's obsession, especially at that time, of getting big grinding guys who hit in a league that at that point was starting to undergo change to more speed and skill based.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So I think we both agree worst trade in Ducks history, Shea Theodore.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. I think honorable mention goes to trading away Teemu and Andy McDonald trade. I think those are the honorable mentions for me.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Good. What is your best trade in Ducks history? Ryan Kessler also, we didn't mention as being a good trade. That was a good trade also. I should say that.
Yes, the Kessler trade was good. The extension was bad. But the trade itself was very good. The other thing that I do want to give up and I want to mention about that is that people commend Bob Murray a lot for that trade. And I think he pulled off the trade like he
should have
deserves
made
some
it
credit.
3 months earlier.
But number one, he should have made it 3 months earlier. And number two, Kessler had Jim Benning over a barrel at that point. Like this wasn't some masterful GM move by Bob Murray. Ryan Kessler would have only accepted a trade to one of three teams: the Boston Bruins, the Chicago Blackhawks, or the Anaheim Ducks. It was reported that the Boston Bruins weren't willing to really make a serious run at him, so it became between the Hawks and the Ducks. And Kessler basically was just like, look, you have to do this. And Bob Murray put together a good enough package to get it done. Yeah, it was a good trade, but that was set up on an absolute tee for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He just took advantage of it. Okay. So you give him credit for that, but don't say he's the wizarding GM.
What do you think the best trade in Ducks history is?
I have a very tough time arguing against the original Teemu trade.
Okay. I agree.
That one.
To be different,
yeah.
I'm going to go with the Chris Pronger to the Ducks trade because that is the trade that put the Ducks over the top and won them the Stanley Cup, in my opinion. So those are two big trades. Those are two franchise-altering trades. I think that those are the only two out of the good list. Gibson and Raquel also, I think, is potentially in that mix in terms of long-term longevity and things like that. But to me, the Pronger trade, the Teemu trade are the two instant changes in franchise history.
Absolutely.
So, real quick, 27th overall. Have you done much research into who you think the Ducks should take with that pick now that it's 27? Because 27 to me does impact it a little bit from being 31. Because to me, the player that I really want to see them take is JJ Peterka. He may be taken with 20. There are a lot of people projecting him in that 27 range. And so the Ducks being 27th is a big deal because they could potentially get JJ Peterka now. And supposedly, if I'm remembering correctly, the Ducks had mentioned they were scouting guys in Germany. And so obviously that probably meant Tim Stützle at the time. But if you're going to see Stützle, you're going to see Reichel. You're going to see Peterka also.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, just looking at some of the rankings and stuff here, I've done a little bit of research. And what I would say is that there's somebody who I could really see. Now, I think it really is going to depend here on who the Ducks get at 6. If the Ducks get Jamie Drysdale or D at 6, I think that does kind of impact what happens at the back end of that draft over there. However, if they get a forward, then you could reasonably see them going more for a defenseman at that point. Now, I've been a big fan as far as forwards go of William Wallander. I think that he could be available at those points. And I mean, Wallander.
Wait, isn't Wallander a defenseman? Am I going crazy here?
No. Oh, sorry. Wallander is a defenseman. So yes, so I take that back. Wallander as a defenseman if they go with a forward at 6 overall. And I think the big thing is that Wallander, he's huge. He's 6'4", but he's an incredible skater.
He scares me because of being 6'4". That draft profile just personally scares me. And
Fair.
and that's just my personal preference. Actually, you want to know a player? I don't know if you've looked into him too much. I want them to take. I think he'll be available in the second round. I want them to take, what is it, 36, I think is their next pick, something like that. Jeremy Poirier. He absolutely killed it, but he's more of an offensive molded defenseman, very risky. And so if you look up his stats from this past season, Jeremy Poirier put up, and he's a player I've been harping on actually a little bit of late. He put up, let me go to it, 20 goals as a defenseman, 53 points in 64 games as a defenseman in the QMJHL. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I mean, let me just look it up, but I'm Jamie Drysdale, granted, difference between OHL and QMJHL, there is a slight difference. QMJHL is a little bit easier to score. Jamie Drysdale put up 47 points in 49 games. So a little bit better point production wise, but if you can get Jeremy Poirier in the second round, that could be a steal. Absolute steal.
You didn't even let me finish my thing
Sorry.
of Wallander.
I got too excited about Jeremy Poirier. Go on. Give me your Wallander rant.
The biggest reason why I really like Wallander is not only because of his size, but the fact that he's an incredible skater at 6'4", and the fact that he's young. He's got a late July birthday, so he is fairly raw, and I do think that does make him a little bit more of a risky pick in the, at 27 overall. But he is a game who has, I think, a very high ceiling if he can shore up a few of the holes in his game, and it's not very often that you see a 6'4" guy who can move like him. That's one of the reasons why Quinton Byfield is so highly ranked, is because he's 6'4" and the dude skates like the wind. So I think that's one of the reasons why I really like him as a defensive pick. I do agree with you, though, that Paterka is actually going to be Paterka is actually a very exciting prospect, and I do agree that he would be a very interesting forward at that point.
Yep. All right, so let's get into this past week. There were some hockey played this last week in the bubble. There have been some exciting games. There's an exciting game going on right now as we speak. So let's get into some of the topics that Felix and I have been kind of going on this. So let me know, who do you want to put a spotlight on? A former Duck that you want to put a spotlight on from this past week. It can be anyone who's a former Duck that's playing in the playoffs. I've got a couple listed, but I've got one that I want to go with. But lay it out who you want to give a little bit of a spotlight to. Just for reference, I put a spotlight and actually said nice things about Derek Grant last week.
Wow.
I know.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm making steps. I'm trying to be nice and be positive.
You really are, aren't you? I think that I'm probably going to take your selection, but just watching Shea Theodore has just been such a damn privilege to this. Like, you can tell you can tell that he's putting up a case to eventually make a serious Norris run.
Yep. So I have him listed. I put another one down, though, just because I kind of figured that you might say that. So I'm going to put a spotlight on Pat Maroon. Pat Maroon had this past week in, let me see how many games it technically was, in his four games this past week. 68.44 expected goals for percentage.
Jesus.
Who's
he playing with mostly?
That's a very good question. Let me look it up, actually. I believe he's playing on the Tampa Bay, I think, fourth line, but he's getting power play minutes on top of that. So he's an interesting player where he can really kind of play all. I mean, we saw this when he was with the Ducks. He can play up and down the lineup.
I like him getting second unit time just because, and we saw, even though I think Pat Maroon was probably a little bit better with the Ducks, like, we saw that he got a lot of power play time, and he was basically the perfect guy for Getzlaf to bank pucks in off of, and I don't think that skill set has changed. You plant him right in front of the net with a man advantage on the second unit, and you've got a really good body guy in front of the net there, so I like him there.
I wasn't fully able to watch all of the game tonight, but someone tell me if this is right. I'm looking at Daily Faceoff right now, which is a great website if you're looking for line combos and things like that, if you play DFS, different things along those lines. The fourth line for the Tampa Bay Lightning is currently listed as Pat Maroon, Cedric Paquette, and Luke Schenn.
Luke Schenn?
Yeah. I know he's on Tampa. Why did he play on the fourth line tonight for Tampa? And I just didn't watch the game until overtime, and that's why?
Is Tampa carrying 7 defensemen and asking him to switch?
Oh, that might be why. I don't think
that's
there's
what it is.
I don't think there's a way for Daily Faceoff to list 7 defensemen. And so that's probably what that is.
I'm pretty sure that Luke Schenn has been their 7th defenseman.
So they've only been rolling 11 forwards then.
Exactly.
Which actually makes Pat Maroon even that much more influential in a lineup, because he's a guy that can basically play wherever. And so that's I want to put my spotlight on him. I know he leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in some Ducks fans' mouths because of various different things. But, I mean, he is a former Duck. He's a player that played a big role in the 2015 conference final run, and he's having a hell of a playoffs right now. So, all right, let's get into this. Hero of the week. Who is your hero of the week? It can be a coach, it can be a player, it can be a team, it can be a broadcaster, whoever you want it to be. Who's your...
Man, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be eating a little bit of crow here, both because of what's happening right now and because of what I said before this series. I got to say Rick Bowness is my hero of the week. What the Dallas head coach has done so far in this series against the Avs, I think is nothing short of extraordinary. Like, going into this, I was never a big fan of Bowness as a coach. I've always felt that generating offense has been his weakest ability. He's been a solid defensive coach, but when he's behind the bench, his teams have never really scored much. And so I just thought, oh man, going against this juggernaut of an offensive team, the Avs, that's going to be, that's pretty going to be pretty obvious. But it turns out that all of my playoff takes are aging like 3-day-old milk.
Yeah, you're not doing too well.
No, I am not. But you know what? I'm actually kind of okay with that just because it's like utter chaos right now.
Oh, it is.
But I got to admit, man, he's got Dallas playing just this explosive game. They're taking advantage of the Avs' mistakes. He's got them confident. Like, Dallas is just playing with a swagger that I don't think I've ever seen them play with.
I will say, slight caveat, Colorado losing Eric Johnson and Philip Grubauer really helped out Dallas.
That's definitely big. But again, this is a series that, the Stars could have easily gone in and just been like, okay, look, we're just going to try our best. No, Bowness has them playing like they're like, no, you know what? We were the favorites all along. We've got this. And I got to hand it to him because I don't think anybody, even with my bad playoff takes, I don't think anybody saw this coming.
Yeah. I did not. I definitely did not. I thought Dallas was going to be a little bit better than you gave them credit for. You had Colorado in a sweep, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. So I think I had Colorado in 6, something along those lines. But yeah. So my hero of the week goes in line. Last week, my analytics darling was Max Pacioretty, and I had said that because he had not really scored up until this week. But his on-ice metrics, his individual metrics were very good. And he put up 2 goals and an assist in 4 games. And I believe he had a couple goals last night. I think were both goals last night?
Yep.
Yeah, so coming through, he's a guy that just has been very good and just hasn't been able to find the back of the net, but is shooting the puck a bunch and has been very good for Vegas. So Max Pacioretty, hero of the week on top of him being my analytics darling. Also, realized I had a nice 2-for-1 in my former Duck spotlight with Luke Schenn.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep. Now, I want to point out as well that Max Pacioretty is like one of the recent golden examples of a brilliant trade that worked out extremely well for both sides.
I hate you for that.
That
pun.
Max Pacioretty is now, killing it with Vegas. He's thriving there. He loves it. He signed that big contract extension, but at the same time, Montreal now has Nick Suzuki, who absolutely was a monster in the Canadian series before they were eliminated, and that dude's going to be a star. And that's another thing where that's one of those trades that you have to take a swing on. Remember, the Ducks were one of the finalists to trade for Pacioretty back when he was with Montreal.
Yeah, it would have been bad if they had.
And they supposedly, the report is that they weren't willing to oh my god, sorry, there's just absolute chaos right now in front of the net for Dallas and Colorado. The report was that the Ducks weren't willing to include one of their top prospects. The most thrown around name was Sam Steele. And so yeah.
Actually, I would do that now. Never mind. I take that back.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been bad. That would have been fine for the Ducks. Ducks would have been okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
but it was a great trade for both of them.
0 of the week. I'll let you go on this because I think we have the same one.
Actually, you go.
Okay. My 0.
Oh, no. Wait. I got it. Yes, I remember. I completely blanked for a second.
We actually discussed this.
We did. Being unemployed has me down to 2 brain cells, and they're both,
fine.
Fighting to the death.
Just giving you a hard time.
I know. The 0 of the week, it's the Anaheim Ducks org. The fact that I believe they are one of only 2 teams in the NHL who has not issued any sort of legit team statement on the playoff postponement and the social justice issues that are currently going on. All they did was, I think there was just a quote tweet from an NHL tweet that says, we stand together. And that was it. And to me, look, I'm not necessarily expecting the Ducks to come out, and for those of you who saw the Baltimore Ravens put out a statement that was I think the gold standard for one of these statements, where the Ravens issued their hey, we believe this is wrong, this shouldn't happen, and then they proceeded to list out, I think it was 5 or 6 different actionable items that politicians could do to actually start addressing this. For all the people who always say, oh, yeah, well, they're protesting, so what are they actually going to do tangibly? The Baltimore Ravens are the golden example of that. So I wasn't necessarily expecting the Ducks to go that far, but to me, when you have an entire league and so many other teams issuing statements, issuing a statement to me is just the absolute bare minimum you can do. And they didn't even do that.
And that's where I want to jump in here, because honestly, to me, I completely understand, and I do actually agree that I think that they are my 0 of the week. To me, the statement, it'd be nice to have it, but it would be all performative. To me, what I want to see from the Ducks is actual action items of, not necessarily obviously on the levels of the Ravens. Do something in the community. Do something to spotlight all of these things. And to me, that's what I actually do want to see. The statement would have been, it's there, but it almost would have been performative at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I want to see, hopefully they're able to understand what the statement should have been. Hopefully they understand that at this point, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. They need to take that next step though. And I think that would be the way to be able to. And and granted, I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that next step is, what that is they can do. And actually, spoiler, you're actually going to write an article, I think, in a little bit, kind of going through maybe some things that they can do. So keep a lookout for that on the website. But yeah, so completely agree.
Yeah, I think just off the top of my head, something that they could immediately do. So here's the thing: is that they are. The Samuelis are a team that is extremely invested in the community. We all know this.
Yes,
their
agreed.
Grassroots hockey campaigns,
and they do a lot for the community.
Program that they do, the SCORE program that they do a lot for the community. And as Ginger Wolf just pointed out in the chat, that they're active in the community, and he's surprised to not see any action here. I think that one thing that you're seeing a lot of sports teams doing is the Samuelis and the Ducks requesting with the Orange County Board of Elections to try and make Honda Center a polling place. A lot of arenas are doing this. That would be huge.
And I think that is definitely an action item that they can do that I think puts actions instead of words. And I think right now actions are more important than words.
Exactly. So that's a big one, I think, off the top of my head. And I think it would be fairly easy, too, because keep in mind the city of Anaheim actually owns Honda Center. So the Samuelis technically don't. But look, the Samuelis are billionaires. They're running that arena. They have clout that almost nobody else has in relation to the city of Anaheim. I bet if they really pushed for it, they could definitely make this happen.
Yeah, although the one thing I don't know, and this is just me speaking, I pay attention to this stuff, but not super in depth. All of California's vote by mail, right?
Yes.
So would a polling? I guess maybe it would be like a vote, ballot collection spot or something like that.
Well, there's still going to be in-person polling, but you do have the ability in California to drop off your mail-in ballot at a polling site.
Got it. So it would be for that. Okay. No, that's good to know. So So moving on, I don't really have a narrative this week because we've kind of gone over a lot of it. I don't know if you have any other good or bad narrative within the hockey world that you want to focus on. If not, we can move on to the final one of Analytics Darling. Got anything?
Yeah. No, let's move on.
All right, let's move on to Analytics Darling. And so my Analytics Darling is actually my narrative from last week. The New York Islanders. They're actually good.
Yep.
I said this last week. The Philadelphia Flyers were super overrated. I think that they were a paper tiger. They were the only reason why they got past Montreal was Carter Hart stood on his freaking head. And so maybe this all changes as you're going to get Tampa and Islanders and New York's going to look awful against Tampa, which is definitely possible. But I think a team that has been bad in terms of some advanced metrics, but have turned it around these playoffs, the Islanders deserve credit for being an analytics darling because they are a team that does not get credit from the analytics community, myself included, because their metrics are not good. And I think that they deserve the credit for this.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
You have anything else, any person, any team, anything like that you want to add?
Yeah, I got somebody, Mark Stone. Okay. And Mark Stone has been, for those of you who do follow analytics, Mark Stone has basically been the god of analytics for the past few seasons now, with some people going so far as to say Mark Stone may be the best player on the planet over
it's possible
Connor McDavid. And honestly, there's a legit I wouldn't say he's the most skilled player. Like, I still think that's McDavid, but in terms of best overall player, when factoring in all the situations, offense, defense, power play, penalty kill, everything, Mark Stone has a legitimate argument as the best hockey player on the planet right now, and I think for sure he is one of the top 3 best players. And so far in these playoffs, he's running almost 70% expected goals for. He's rocking a 60% shot attempt percentage. He's scoring, when he's on the ice, Vegas is scoring 4.11 goals per game and only giving up 2.19. Like, it's unbelievable how good he is. And Dmitry Filipovich had one of the best tweets I think I've seen regarding Mark Stone last night, where he said Mark Stone just lost a puck battle, decided it wasn't for him, and it never happened again. And that pretty much perfectly encapsulates what kind of player he is just that he is the guy who I legitimately do not think Mark Stone has a single weakness in his game, not even something that is below average. I think he's either slightly above average or amazing at everything. He is the definition of a complete hockey player, and we're seeing that in the numbers.
Yep, agreed. All right, we got a couple questions. Also, if anyone in the Twitch chat has questions they want us to answer, throw them in there. Our good buddy Scott mentioned on Twitter, have your draft pick feelings changed in the last little bit? And specifically to me, do you still think that Holtz gets the nod? So I've been a very big Holtz on the Holtz bandwagon. Here's my thing. Here's my ranking of players realistically the Ducks could get in order of I want them versus I still would be very happy with them, obviously, because I think anyone in this mix is very good. But for me, it goes Rossi, Drysdale, Holtz, Perfetti and Raymond are about the same for me personally. And I know that I'm lower on both those than a lot of people, but for me, that's where I'm at. And I've kind of stayed in that place for a while now. Have your feelings changed? Because you're a guy that's actually much higher on Perfetti than I am. And
I at this point, I am going to be surprised if Perfetti makes it past Detroit.
I think he's going to Detroit though also.
Yeah, just because he's Saginaw, he's literally a couple of hours outside. Yeah, they're just a couple of hours outside of Detroit. He's the type of player, just a very dynamic forward who has just so many skill sets and is a great skater. Like he's the player profile that just screams Steve Yzerman's name.
Yeah.
So I will be shocked if he does make it past 4, but I have Perfetti actually ranked higher than all of them. Of those people, Perfetti would be the highest ranked for me because I am a big fan of his. After him, I would put Rossi, and I wasn't huge on Rossi at first, but I have
You've seen the light. You've seen the light.
I have.
It's Felix.
I have seen the light,
it's Felix.
I've been growing a light. I've been growing a lot more on Rossi. So I would put Perfetti, Rossi. I would put Holtz after, Drysdale, and then Raymond. I think I'm the same with you on Raymond. I know our
There are a lot
Swedish
of people that
counterparts
love him.
are, yeah, especially European-focused people really, really,
Yeah.
really love Raymond. So that's going to be interesting to see how he develops. But that is basically my rankings right now.
Raymond may be the guy the Ducks take. I mean, as I've thought about it more, it would make a lot of sense for Raymond to go to the Ducks, and I wouldn't be mad about it either. Here's what I think all Ducks fans should realize. Any of these players have the potential to be very, very good.
Yep.
So I think that's the key thing to note here. All right, so
Now, I do want to say really quick, because I've been asked about this a lot, why I would pick Holtz over Drysdale. And honestly, I do believe, obviously, the defense is a need for the Ducks. It's a pretty big need.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, goal scoring is still an even bigger need. And we saw this season that even with kind of a makeshift defensive core, the Ducks weren't awful on defense. They weren't good, but they weren't terrible. And they had quite a bit of time where they were kind of right in the middle of the league with defense. And so to me, but like they're near the bottom of offensive scoring. And you have Trevor Zegras, who potentially could be an offensive game breaker, but he's really the only high ceiling offensive person that the Ducks have in their system right now. The Ducks need another high offense person. And to me, that's one of the reasons why I have Holtz. While Holtz may have more holes in his game, Holtz's ceiling is like perennial 40 goal scorer. Like that's how his shot is. And so that's one of the reasons why I have him above Drysdale. It's close, but I have him slightly above.
Yeah, no, 100% agree there. It's give or take with me with Holt and Drysdale. I think that you can make the argument either way. So
I don't think there's a wrong answer there.
So we've got a couple questions from our Twitch chat. By the way, for those of you out there, we do a live stream of the show each and every time if you listen to the recorded version or the YouTube version at twitch.tv/crashthepond. If you want to help support the show, you can do it there in a way that's completely free to you if you have Amazon Prime. You just have to hit that subscribe button and link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account and redo that and just hit that subscribe button every 30 days. It helps out more than you can imagine. So go ahead and do that. So we got a couple questions. Lewis has a non-hockey question, and since you're the baseball guy, and we know Lewis is a Angels / NorCal fan, I guess, technically.
Bay Area fan.
Could be either Bay Area team from what I've seen. But he's like that. Not really a question, but a suggestion. The San Francisco Giants are in a wild card spot. Everyone should root for them since the Angels are just there.
They're not even just there. The Angels are dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you this suggestion. If you're an Angels fan, root for the Padres, actually. The Padres are fun.
Yeah, no, I am fully on board the Padres train right now. They're so fun. The trade deadline was just ended up today, and the Padres made like 5 big deals.
Clevenger.
They still kept like, it's so funny. The Padres farm system is so deep. Oh no, this is great. The Padres farm system is so deep that they made these major deals and they only went back 1 spot to number 2 in the farm system rankings. Wow. Like, that's ridiculous. And so Tatis Jr., incredible. I'm fully on board the Padres bandwagon, although I will say, Lewis, that if I'm going to pick a Bay Area team, it's going to be the A's. I think the A's are really fun as well, and they're a lot more of an exciting team to me than San Francisco is. It's just my personal opinion.
Fair enough. All right, so we got a couple more questions. Let's blitz on through them. Ginger Wolf asks, question for CJ, what do you think Pasternak's weaknesses are?
That's a very good question. I need to look this up because usually in watching him, I've kind of had a hunch on this, and I need to see. Give me just 1 second here. We obviously know that he's an amazing goal scorer. He's the perfect complement for the perfection line. That's, for those of you who don't know, that's what they call the Bergeron, Pastrnak, Marchand line. That being said, I've always felt that Pastrnak was not very good defensively, that he's mostly a trigger man, and looking at his regularized adjusted plus minus charts from Evolving Hockey, looking at it, yeah, he's not awful defensively, but he's definitely in the negatives.
He's your prototypical winger.
he's your prototypical winger, and Marchand, I think is definitely a lot better defensively.
Yeah.
Then that he's definitely got some good defensive instincts, and a look at some of his numbers will tell you the same. And then obviously everybody knows Bergeron is a defensive god, but Pasternak, I think that does speak to Pasternak's perfect placement on that line. The fact that, look, he may not be great at defense, but you have two skaters already who can help make up for that, and you have a guy who can just launch a puck and receive it whenever need be. So I would say his defense isn't the best, but even then, that's probably the biggest knock I have on his game, and it's not a very big knock.
Yep. All right. So, question from Heyo Deflo. Who survives if the Ducks miss the playoffs again next season? Murray, Eakins, both, or neither? So, just for reference, last episode, I said that I think Murray may go and Eakins would stay.
See, I would agree. That's my...
Because I think Eakins was more of a Samueli pick. I think Eakins was a Samueli pick more so than I think a Murray pick, to be honest.
And honestly, that's what I've gotten from as well. I think that Eakins was definitely the Samueli pick. That said, Murray has had such a long leash for so long. This is his team. He's clearly set in motion a plan for approaching the expansion draft, and Bob Murray only has one more year on his deal after this year. So my traditional thinking has always been that they basically I think my overall impression has been that these are the last couple of years of Bob Murray, no matter what, before he potentially retires or retreats into like a front office advisor type situation, because I think even if he does do well and they keep him around, I don't see him outlasting past his contract, past the expansion draft. But I will agree that if somebody does go, it would probably be Murray.
Here's my argument for Murray pre-expansion draft is the Samuelis must understand after last expansion draft how much that can impact a franchise. So if you lose confidence in him, you should move him. You should let him go before it. And I think that's the key thing there. And then Lewis chimes in. This is the final question. What percentage would you put the Kings picking Stützle at?
You go for this one.
I think 50-50.
I'm going to give it a little bit better odds at that. I'm going 55-45 they take Stützle.
Oh, that's like barely more.
All right, fine, 60-40.
Okay, fair. 60-40. There you go. Be bolder,
Just all of the things that the LA Scouts have talked about, as Rob Blake has talked about, Bob McKenzie's rankings, there's a lot of reason to believe that the Kings, I don't necessarily know if the Kings have made a final decision on that, but I would probably put it greater than 50-50 that they're going to go Stützle at 2.
Yeah, I would say, I say 50-50, but I lean towards the Stützle over Byfield, honestly. All right, kind of that's it for questions. Anything? Are you watching anything right now? Anything that you wanna give a shout out to in this pandemic era that you've enjoyed on TV outside of hockey?
Oh, jeez.
And yes, this was just an elaborate ploy for you to talk about this, for me to then talk about something I want to talk about.
Fair enough. I will say that Parks and Recreation is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and I love it just because it's such an optimistic show. It's a life-affirming show. It's a show that's still, to this day, I've watched it so many times, and I still laugh out loud at it. And it's gotten me through some tough times, and I think, everybody's going through tough times right now. This is a very difficult time in these unprecedented times.
Unprecedented.
God, if I hear another commercial do that, I'm going to ram my head through the drywall.
Unprecedented, CJ. Unprecedented.
Yeah, but that being said, I just feel like Parks and Recreation is just a show that can help leave a little bit of optimism in this world. And so if you guys need a pick-me-up, definitely go watch that show. Don't worry, skip the first season. First season, not that great. Just Wikipedia what happens. Second season onward gets amazing.
Yep. Yeah, this was all an elaborate ploy for me to say the Tottenham documentary, All or Nothing, Tottenham, is up on Amazon Prime.
Only do that if you're a masochist.
Or you're No, so here's the thing. If you enjoyed like the HBO 24/7 series, by the way, it's 6-3. Colorado had just scored. Dallas just scored. There's an empty net now, with 5 minutes left in the game. This is amazing. But Tottenham All or Nothing is on Amazon Prime. The first 3 episodes are out. If you like HBO 24/7, this is that over the course of an entire season. It's insanely interesting to watch. My wife, who absolutely despises soccer, actually, and actually went to games with me in England to see Tottenham play, still just puts up with me watching it, does not enjoy it. Enjoyed watching the documentary last night somewhat. Found herself saying wow watching some of the players practice, things like that. But you get behind the scenes and you get to see player-manager interactions. You get to see Jose Mourinho come in and be a complete dick to Dele Alli, to put it lightly. It definitely hurt because I had to see my Tottenham fire Mauricio Pochettino and bring in Jose Mourinho, which is essentially like the Ducks bringing in Randy Carlisle again. So if you're interested, if you like soccer, it's a must-watch.
We are just dropping Twitch streamers right now.
We actually gained one right now. Boom. Boom. But very, very good. What else? Oh, All Out. Wrestling Talk. All Out is this upcoming Saturday. AEW, great. WWE, the Roman Reigns heel turn was fantastic. Why did they have to give him the title right away? Let it build. Slow burn. Let The Fiend have the title for a little. Made no sense. Really made me angry.
By the way, I want to leave this on a hot take here since Lewis just brought it up. The Office is insanely overrated, and Parks and Rec just runs circles around it.
You're incorrect there, and I'm not even someone who loves The Office, and you're incorrect there.
Nope.
You're just bold-faced wrong. So I think that's gonna do it for tonight. So if you want to help support the show, you can find us obviously at Crash the Pond or crashthepond.com. Yeah, Ginger Wolf just says now you're dropping people. You can find us at crashthepond.com. You can find our weekly articles. I think this week it's supposed to be, is it you that's on it? Or is it Felix? I don't know. I think it's Felix, actually. Regardless, there will be an article kind of almost 31 thoughtsy breaking down the past week in hockey. And there's going to be some more content just as the weeks go on. Obviously, as the Ducks come back, we'll get more and more on the website as we go. You can also find me on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. You can find the website at Crash the Pond. And you can also find CJ at CJ Woodling. The fact that his Twitter handle is not showing on your screen right now if you're watching a video is completely on me. Completely my fault. I dropped the ball there. Sorry, CJ. I have it somewhere. I just, we had started, couldn't find it. Got lazy.
My fragile ego can't handle this omission.
Yeah, and if you want to help support the show, like I said, twitch.tv/crashthepond. You can find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/crashthepond. If you want to like the video there, watch it there. It helps us out a lot. If you want to help support the show monetarily, you can find us at patreon.com/crashthepond, where for the $1 tier, you get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord channel, which is a lot of fun. A lot of really good people in there. It's a fun little community. Some of the people in this Twitch chat are in there, and they can definitely verify that it's a good time in there. At the $5 tier, you get 2 bonus episodes a month where we kind of riff. It honestly is a lot like this episode, but even more so. And also, if you want to do it in a way that's completely free to you, leave us an Apple Podcast review. It helps out a lot. We've really enjoyed getting those, seeing those reviews from people, seeing from all over the world, all over the country. And so if you want to help us out in a way that's free to you, drop us a review on Apple Podcasts. Anything I missed there? I think that covered it. I think that covered it. Oh, we're on Facebook. Facebook Crash the Pond articles get posted there. If you're more of a Facebook than a Twitter person, you can find us on there. So I think that's gonna do it for tonight. Any last words for everyone?
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. Thanks for staying with us while the inmates have ran the asylum, and let's have a good rest of the playoffs here.
We did an okay job with this running the asylum. We didn't burn it down.
What a ringing endorsement.
We didn't burn it down.
Okay job.
No, it wasn't
We
you.
didn't burn it down.
It was me. I was giving myself crap. It's on me. When Felix isn't here,
Love
we don't
yourself, Jake. Practice self.
When we don't have Felix here, there's no adult in the room to keep us on track.
Oh, this is more fun.
Fair enough. All right, have a good one, everyone. Bye.